This podcast could potentially have adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly the possibility of sexual content. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Drinking with Authors, the podcast. I'm your host, Erica Lance. My co-host today, who is going to appear magically within moments, is Valerie Willis. She just got caught behind an accident. Yay, technical difficulties. Woo-woo. Our sponsor today is Skunk Brothers Spirits. Coupon code DWA10. Please check them out. They're amazing. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to be on the podcast or have an author you think should be, email us at drinkingwithauthors@gmail.com. We would love to have them. Okay, my amazing guest today, who is absolutely sitting in the best background possible. So if you're not watching this YouTube, you need to watch the YouTube, is Robin Mimna. Mimna. Woo! I did it. Okay.
You got it.
Yes, let's talk about what we're drinking. It's been definitely an interesting day for me. Okay, so I'm actually double fisting it, everyone. I'm just going to warn you in advance. So I like to get Sonic cherry limeades, and then I put the Skunk Brothers Spirits Lightning in it.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it is actually, the Lightning is their like moonshine, and so it mixes really well with that. And I also made myself a pomegranate lime with gin, because I was upstairs. I'm like, oh, I need a drink, blah, blah, blah. And I forgot about this. So just for the record, I'm going to get really wasted.
Very nice. Very nice.
Exciting. It's exciting. What are you drinking, Robin?
Well, I am also drinking gin. I am drinking what I call a Southern French 75, which is basically Empress gin, a little bit of lavender simple syrup and Sprite.
Wow. And it's in a
it's in a Halloween skull glass.
Iridescent. I got that word out before I drank too much of this Lightning. Skull glass, and I love
my background.
Yes, everything. You are themed today.
I am.
I love it. I love it. I have my temp dog kennel in the background for my puppy, because sometimes when he's down here, he needs to go in a crate.
Mine is sadly locked out.
Yeah, no, mine is upstairs right now, because otherwise he's like, oh, you're doing something?
Mm-hmm.
Let me get immediately involved in that.
Right.
Okay, so Robin, for those that don't know you, what do you write?
Well, I write lots of stuff actually, but I write fiction. I write nonfiction. I'm really into local history, so I have a local history blog that I write a lot too. But I just published my first novel, which is a YA. So
that I love all of that. We have so many avenues to explore here. Let's talk about your YA novel that you just released, and then we're going to peel back the layers.
Okay.
Like, I'd say an onion, but I really agree with Donkey from Shrek that it should be parfait, because I happen to love parfait. So let's talk about your YA novel. What is the name of it?
It is called Hating Jesse Harmon. I got a copy of it.
Ooh.
Pretty. It's probably background. It's back. But anyway, it is a YA it's a high school romance-y kind of book. It's about a girl named Frances who isn't very popular, and she wants to prove that anybody can be prom queen. So she enlists the help of her friends and a shy girl with autism who has her own secret. And but when they find out that their plan works too well, she kind of finds out that popularity and fame is a little bit more than she expected it to be.
Very, very cool. And when did that release?
That came out August 23rd of this year.
That is exciting. So is that your first like public, whoa, and the lightning's here, published fiction work? I can use real words, I promise. I've posted before.
That it is my first, yeah.
That's exciting. So what made you decide, because you sound like you're an author of many other things, what made you decide to go into fiction?
Well, I've been writing since high school, and I did write short stories and fiction, and I started novel writing, I think, about 20 years ago. Some friends of ours, we were all working in a call center. We were doing overnight technical support, and we just all decided to do NaNoWriMo. What's that? In November. And we made a bet that who would get to the, you had to do 50,000 words. We bet who could get to 50,000 the first, and I won. And I ended up taking that and turning it into like this 100,000 word novel, which, by the way, I don't know if other people have done this, but that first novel is absolute garbage. Like, not
Normally,
a coherent word in it. Like,
a lot of times for people, the first novel is a great exercise in what not to do. And then you move on to the novel that actually works.
At the time, I thought
it started with, it was a dark, stormy night. So that
right. I think I hit all the bad things on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And but that actually, it was a good thing because it got me started. It got me saying, okay, let's do this, and maybe writing something I really do want to do. And I joined a writers group in Daytona Beach. We are the oldest writing group, I think, in Central Florida. I don't know that I can make that claim. Somebody might come get me, but I kind of had done a couple of chapters of this book, Hating Jesse Harmon, and they looked at it and they said, this is pretty good, you should work on it. And so I did. I worked on it with them, and they kind of encouraged me and got me going.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So obviously you did this for a time before, So what, our co-host is about to magically appear. It's going to be amazing. There she is, kind of. There's her.
Kind of.
It's okay. It's like a wrecking ball with Valerie every time she comes into a room. Virtually. It's totally fine. There she is.
Don't make fun of me. I went on a quest, and the traffic was worse than I thought. But
I told everybody.
I got a Halloweeny themed drink for today.
Okay, well, we were discussing things, but tell us about your drink, Val.
It's bee nectar, and it's called Zombie Killer, and it's a hard cider with honey and cherry.
That sounds good.
That sounds very Halloweeny. I like it. She's going to be completely useless in about 30 minutes. So how that goes. No, I let the audience know that you would be swinging in because you were swinging in behind an accident. And anyway, now you're here. Okay. So Robin just told us don't ask any questions you're going to end up asking the question that I already asked, but go ahead. But Robin was just about to explain why there was a 20-year gap between her first brilliant novel that she wrote. Not brilliant, it was the first novel, and her current just published in August novel. Why was this such
what happened?
Oh gosh. Well, I got married. And I just sort of put it away, like it's just one of those things where, I don't think everybody does this, but sometimes you're just sort of happy enough not to work on these other projects, I guess. Life sort of happens, and then I was not married anymore. I got divorced, and after that,
I was married and then not married,
and then not married.
Brought out the writer.
And time consuming. I get it.
And I just kind of sometimes unhappiness sort of breeds that sort of motivation to get into a project and kind of bury yourself in that. And that's kind of what this was. I was just writing all the time. I went from writing nothing at all to writing every single day. And that's where this came from.
So does that mean book 2 is finished as well?
No, I made a couple of attempts at a book 2 on this, and I haven't found something that really makes me happy as far as a sequel goes. I am working on another book though, but it's not related. It's not a YA. It's a historical fiction.
What is the other book you're working on, unless it's erotica and you don't want to say?
No.
But if it's erotica, you should say anyway and take a drink of your drink. Do tell us.
It's a historical fiction, or LGBTQ plus historical fiction but involving my local area, my local history that I love so much. So it's been a lot of fun to write, but it's about maybe 30-45% there.
Oh, I love that. She's in Daytona.
Oh, you're in Daytona.
Well, I'm in Lake Helen. It's near DeLand, but
it's close enough.
Yeah, it's close enough.
We should meet for drinks in person because
that's right. You're in Orlando, right?
Yeah. And I go to
absolutely.
Longwood and Stanford often to hang out with friends. I've got relatives in DeLand and Port Orange.
Oh, okay.
So I get around, and I'm pretty sure my mom went to the same hotel and rented the same room in Daytona Beach every first 2 weeks of June every year growing up. So I know a bit about Daytona and a little bit about Lake Helen and stuff like that. But as far as the history, I don't think I've really delved into the history in that area very much.
Right. There's another rabbit hole she can take you down with her.
Oh yeah. You'd have to extend this out about 6 or 7 hours, but yeah, I could bring it.
Oh, we're not doing it on this show. I'm just saying, Valerie will go into research with you in a heartbeat. She will go down the research rabbit hole. She's like, oh, I'm going to go meet Robin. I should look up everything that's ever happened before. And I'm like, oh my God.
I mean, Daytona had that whole crazy, like the guy who murdered his wife and was like, had a mistress from the Daytona Beach pier, all that chaos. That was juicy bits.
There is so much for Volusia County. I mean, we've had, we have history of Paleo Indians, like ancient, the Shell Middens all the way up to, murdering pioneers and the Seminole Wars and the Civil War. I mean, it's pretty extensive. There's a lot of information and a lot of opportunity to write stories based on it. So it's been a lot of fun to do.
In that case, since you wrote a historical LGBTQ, like which time period did you end up settling on then?
I am doing, the time period is a Reconstruction, probably about 1872, I think is the year I settled on.
Well, that's fun.
It is. It actually has a female sheriff, which is, not accurate. It's fun for my novel and I'm enjoying it. So I'm going to suspend disbelief on that one for the sake of a good story.
Yeah.
I think that's great though, because you can take a time period where maybe people weren't represented, regardless of what part of the lack of being represented is. And, that's the fun part about writing any sort of fiction or screenplays or stuff like that. You go, yeah, this period was neat and all, but there was some dumb shit and I'm going to change it. And this is how we're going to do it moving forward. I think that's really, really cool.
1870s female sheriff. All I can think about is Sharon Stone in The Quick and the Dead.
Oh yes. It's been a lot of fun,
Why are you looking at me like that, Erica? Look at her shaking her head. I'm like,
I cannot believe you brought up that movie.
If I had a screen girlfriend crush growing up, that was it.
You know what you should do? You should do one of those little videos on TikTok of who my teenage crush was and who I married.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. I think you going from Sharon Stone to Justin would be brilliant and would absolutely go viral, by the way.
I should.
It really would, just for the record. That's so well done with that. Anyway, so Robin, I'm excited that you're continuing to write. That is super duper cool. And so when do you intend on having that book done?
Well, right now I work 2 jobs and I'm in school. I'm about to finish my English degree at UCF. So I am trying really hard to get it done, but this one's been slow going. I've been working on it about a year and I'm about maybe almost halfway through. So I am not a fast writer. It took me 20 years to do this one. So I'm going for less on this one.
Yeah, no, it's so funny. I had an interview with somebody the second time they've been on the podcast, and he said, because he put his book and it took him, I want to say it was like 8 years or something to do the first one. And then we had a podcast and the next one came out a year later after our podcast. And he's like, yeah, you make me write faster
Yeah,
I was like, that's so cool.
Pressure
You
is
need
so
to go
cool.
faster
You
than
need to go
that.
faster.
I'm gonna try and work faster for you, I promise.
You got to work faster, only because I feel with your background and stuff, and especially you have a unique voice, you're telling a unique story, and there's an audience for it. And if the audience just has to sit around waiting for it, that's no go, you know? And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think audiences can drive us to go faster and get our work out there and do that. I feel like if we remember there are people out there going, hi, I need the story, then it makes, as writers, it's not just like your schedule, it's there's this entire fan base out there that wants to hear your voice.
You know,
wants to-
yeah, and and I think that sometimes the best way to do that is just to write the story that you want to hear and that you want to read, like this, I did some false starts, before this book came out, and this was a story I got to where I think this was the first story I said, if nobody else ever reads it, I still want to know how it ends. So I'm going to finish it. Like if it never gets published, I just have to finish it, and just know how that ends. And I feel this way about the other one. If nobody else reads it, I mean, I'm sure they will, but I'll be satisfied if I can finish it. So I think that motivates me. But I think there's people out there who would want to read it. I have a lot of history friends, local and stuff like that are like, I think it meets kind of two different things. Like there's an LGBTQ kind of story there, and then there's also this history, local history stuff that would be interesting. So
I think it is. I think it absolutely does. I mean, we can always talk about an overarching history that a lot of people have spoken on, but you're talking about a very different area of history that not everybody, like, people can talk about the Greek gods, for instance, and do different takes on the Greek gods and stuff like that. But people have talked about the Greek gods. I mean, not that there's not different stories.
They called out. I like
No,
the
but
God.
you integrate a lot of different mythos in your stories. I'm just saying that, like, if you're going to talk about Hercules, I'm going to give an example, right? There are different variations you could still do, but a lot of people have talked about Hercules or Salem witch trials or something like that. Although I feel definitely more educated since I came back from Salem, but particular parts of Florida and stuff, it's there's so much history in little areas and little towns. And I think people maybe don't think it's important enough to talk about that small little piece, but that small little piece can be completely intriguing, is where I was going to with my limeade that has some of that lightning in it. So anyway, that was my tangent at this moment.
yeah, I'm fascinated with all the local history. I mean, I could talk about it for hours. I could read about it for hours, and that's fine. But also there's this other side of it. I want to see a female sheriff in Reconstruction Florida kicking ass, and taking names and getting away with it.
I love all of that. Absolutely love all of that. And I know Val will love that because Val's the researcher of the two of us. I only research enough to get my facts straight in a novel set in modern times. If I go fantastical, I don't do, I make up my own crap. Like my fantasy is like, I make up crap, suspend disbelief, moving on. But Val will actually research so that she's not,
I go step
making
beyond,
up shit.
and I don't know if you've done this yet. And I highly recommend anyone who's doing historical fiction or doing any kind of research, especially locally. Like I email and I meet up with like local historians and shit to get like the inside gemstones that you're not going to get anywhere. And I go to places and go to the little museums and things and ask a bunch of questions, and they're like, you should go next door and talk to Aunt May because she knows more about all this.
Right.
And the next thing I know, I'm buying them lunch at the local diner, and we're having like this really cool a secret conversation almost, because I'm into the history and they're the keepers of that history, so to speak. Like I've emailed a guy in France and it was like, hey, I saw your article on this. Is it plausible for this this, and this, and then getting a letter back, he goes, I never thought about that. Hold on. And then like months later, him coming back, he goes, I did a research dive and you're right. I'm like, yes.
There, I'm very lucky in that way that I have a lot of history, oriented friends, and and people who are part of the local historical society. And I've shown a couple of them a few pages of what I wrote, and it already sparked this debate where, because my character has a very rare sort of 6-shooter that she uses, but that requires powder to be put in. It's pretty old fashioned, and it sparked a debate. There's no 6-shooter that needs powder, but there actually was. There was one in between, some sort of hybrid and this went on, and people were doing research trying to prove each other wrong, and it turned into this whole thing where I ended up, I think I changed it because I didn't want to deal with it. But it's I have a lot of nice friends who will read it and 100% correct me if I'm wrong on a history fact, which is great, because it's the one thing I don't want to be wrong on, is the little details.
We have to take a break. We will be right back, but I want to then draw the corollary between some of the sci-fi fans and the historical fiction fans that will go out for blood when you get something.
Oh, sure.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Sample locally sourced, quality distilled spirits in the beautiful Columbia River Gorge. At Skunk Brothers Distillery, we're family-owned, brewing small batch grain to bottle spirits, just like our grandfather did back in the Prohibition era. From handcrafted bourbons and moonshine to flavored blends and cordials infused with local fruit. Join us for a tasting tour and buy Skunk Brothers Spirits straight from the source.
It's all in the family at Skunk Brothers Spirits, located in Stevenson, Washington.
Just warn everybody, somehow Val managed to get food into this deal again, and I've told her she cannot have food on the show, and she somehow weaseled food.
Without it. No,
I had waffle fries. Waffle fries and gin sounds good.
Waffle fries and zombie killer.
Okay, that's, first of all, I think that's a horrible combination. Anyway, moving back to the debate.
Hot and red. And
so let's talk about, you've got your first book out. You've got your first book. What was it like to get it in your hot little hand the first time?
Well,
book.
I was absolutely terrified, actually, because it's an Immortal Works. It's my publisher. It's an indie publisher, and I ordered my books like 3 weeks ahead of my release party, which was thrown by the Enterprise Museum through it for me because I'm a volunteer for them, which was awesome. And it was an awesome party. And we invited a whole bunch of other authors. So it was really well attended, and it was a great time. But I ordered it 3 weeks ahead of time, and they did not show up until the day before the party. And I was having breakdowns like all over the place, because I was like, I'm going to go to my own release party without a copy of my own book. And but they did show up, and all was well, but it was terrifying. So when I finally did get it, I was just so relieved that they showed up.
So it wasn't excitement, it was pure relief that you could actually show up to your party and not look like a total butthead.
It was my whole life, I think, is me struggling not to look like a butthead. So
I feel you completely on that one. Val raised her hand too.
And results are mixed most of the time, but I was, when I held it in the front, there was that, oh my god, like this is a real book, like it's a real thing here. And I love my cover. There's actually a little bit of a funny story. Barney Designs did the cover for the publisher. She's very talented. But cover was very important to me. I think a lot of writers, of course, all writers.
So everybody can see it. You're talking about it.
Yeah.
Hold up your book.
Oh, so,
that's okay.
That's cute.
It's a very cute cover, and I absolutely love it. I adore it. And but I was very worried about the cover when I first found out I was getting published, and I wanted to kind of try and control that scenario, because I wanted to make sure I got the cover that I wanted. And they said, "Don't worry, we're going to come up with a great cover for you," but that wasn't good enough for me. So I ran out, and there was this cover designer that I knew that she's very talented, whose name escapes me at the moment. But she designed a cover free for me. She kind of does it like that. She designs covers, if you want to use it, you pay for it. If not, she kind of resells it on her website to somebody else. You know, it's not somewhat. And she did this cover that I loved, and I submitted it to the publisher. I said, hey, I got this cover. Can I use it? And they said, let's check it out. And they said, no, we think we can do better. And I was not pleased. I'm fortunate enough that I did not have an absolute hissy fit or cry and complain or give them any attitude, because I was just not real happy because they weren't letting me control that scenario. But when this cover came out, I cried. I was so happy because it was so beautiful, and it's like 1,000 times better than the other cover. And I'm really glad I listened to them.
You bring up a good point. I mean, we talk to a lot of different authors that do all kinds of publishing. And the truth is, if you want complete, domineering control over every aspect of this, you are going to have to self-publish. That's
true.
just no matter how great a publisher is that you can work with, and we say this as publishers, the fact of the matter is when a publisher is looking at a cover, they want you to be happy with it, but they also need to sell the book, and they know what the marketing is, because people will look at a cover and the cover sells the book. We never judge a book by its cover. Everybody judges a book by its cover. And you can put the absolute wrong cover on a book that will therefore not sell your book, no matter how much you love the cover. We have these conversations with people all the time. They're like, I love this cover. And we're like, cool. No.
Right.
And then a lot of times, sometimes it's as simple as the publisher and editors and the marketing team has looked at your manuscript and your story and realized, oh man, this is like a steampunk crowd, so we need to do a steampunk cover. Whereas you as the author, like, no, I wrote a fantasy story. And you're like, no, you didn't.
Right.
Or
Exactly.
I wrote a science fiction dystopia. No, this is a sci-fi romance, because there's too much hope in the end of every story. And it's always hard, because even myself as a writer, I know I've done the same thing where I'm like, oh, I'm writing this whole like dark historical fantasy piece. And then the marketer comes along and she's like, no, this is paranormal romance. Where's your half naked dude? And I'm like,
it's scary.
Where's your half naked dude? And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to do this.
Trust it. There's a lot of trust involved. And when you get published, you have to trust that, at some point you have to let it go and trust that it's done. I had trouble with that. We went through many rounds of edits and back and forth, and they gave it to me for a final read. And they said, we need it back, by this date. And I think 30 days after that date, I still hadn't turned it in. And they were like, okay, Robin, time, like, give it up. And I just, you have to trust that it's done. And you have to trust their judgment as publishers, and trust their expertise, because, and trust you don't know everything, and that let them do their job.
You can rewrite the same story 100 times. You could never let a story go.
I had a lot of trouble.
That's how that goes. It's so easy to get wrapped up in, I can do this better. And it's like, good, just write another book.
It's true. There's still a couple lines better. I'm like, I could have done that better, but I just
Erica will tell you one of the things I sent her one time, and this is when Anne Rice was still around, and bless her, but she started doing these Facebook video interviews on Facebook, a live thing, and they kept them up. And someone asked her, do you wish, would you ever go back and rewrite Interview with a Vampire? And she's like, could I write it better now? Absolutely. Any book that I've ever written, I can always write better, because as a writer, you should always be growing. She says, but she says, I'll never touch it and I'll never do that. She says, because for who I was and what I knew then, I did the best I could have done then. Right. And be okay with that. And I'm like, what a great, like be mindful of who you were when you wrote the book is an important aspect, and how much you've grown since then.
That's a great way of looking at it. It really is.
You also have to remember, you're in school for English right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the fact of the matter is, you're going to be a better writer tomorrow than you were today. And the day after that, you'll be a better writer. So when you start a manuscript and get to the end of it, if you wait way too long, that writer difference is horrendous, versus if you get it done in less than a year, get it done in less than a year. If you get it done in less than a year,
Yeah.
your writer difference is not as huge as if you're trying to do it over
A
4,
span.
5, 8, 20 years, like you're going to be a very different writer at that. And that's why I think it's important to keep writing and keep going and not go back and go, how do I make this story better? The only time you have to do that is if you give it to some beta readers and they're like, yeah, there needs to be a little more action or whatever, you trust in them, right? Then you can go, okay, where do I go punch this up? But that's not rewrite the whole story. That's add in a couple of scenes and move along, Very few stories should just be junked altogether. It's just not getting sucked into them and never coming up for air. Look at that. That was kind of poetic.
It's true. I went to an indie, I ended up going with an indie publisher because I really liked what they were doing with their books, and all their books are getting audiobooks, which was something I really wanted. And I just liked how they were supporting their authors. And but I did try for a while to try and get an agent and do it, the big publisher, thing. And I did come close. I remember I had some asked for fulls, and I got some advice from a few agents, which at the time was rejections. And that's all it's later you realize, gosh, that was amazing that they came back and read it and gave you advice, and one of them is, this book is actually a combination of what my original thought was for the first and second book. And I had sent the manuscript they had requested it, an agent in New York, and they read it and they said, your writing is good, but this story is not marketable. It needs to have higher stakes. What are you thinking for the sequel? And I told them, and she said, that is one story, put them together. And I rewrote the whole book. And it was amazing advice. I don't think that book was publishable. This book was publishable. I think that you should take the advice when you get it, and at least listen to it, because it changes your writing. My writing is like 20 times, like a million times different than it was from that first book.
No, I think that's what you just said is brilliant. It's brilliant advice for authors out there. And you do have to tell the story that you want to tell. You do have to take advices. This is a learning process. It's a craft. Some people are, it's kind of like people who can pick up a musical instrument and just kind of go with it. And then there are those of us that can't get our pinky to work when we're practicing guitar. Like no matter what, even Guitar Hero, my pinky doesn't work. Can't do expert songs because my pinky wants to do something completely different than the rest of my
got
body.
its own brain and its own agenda. It's fine. It's fine.
It does. It very much is like the Ash and the Evil Dead kind of situation. Because I feel my pinky will attack me.
It wonders.
It does. Like I'll be playing and it'll be like, no, I'm gonna. I don't know what message is going to it, but it literally will hit the button like randomly.
Tattoo and put a face on it.
I should because it's his own little creature, my pinky. So and I'm just saying that because I really was like, I would love to learn to play guitar. I see people play guitar all the time. Months I tried and my pinky would just not participate at all. Sometimes I could get it just to stay still, but you can't play guitar if you're playing with just the anyway, needless to say, it's a craft. That was my tangent. And I think that what you've come to is really good advices. So you're doing all this. Are you going to school for writing English? What are you doing?
English. I decided, I got a job. I'm actually a social worker. That's what I do. It's my day job. And I love my job.
Thank you for your service on that, because that's a harrowing job.
It's interesting, but I love my job very much, and but it just always bothered me that I never finished the degree. I started some 20 years ago, and I quit again right around when I got married. It just seemed like, and so I picked it back up, and I'm about to finish, so it makes me really happy. And I don't know, I thought about going into publishing and trying something there, or teaching, or but it's just something I really felt like I needed to do. I don't think
that's
everybody
great.
needs to do that, but I think it's just something I wanted to do. So
Or just be a kind of prolific, famous writer because you're writing a lot. I mean, there's
Sure.
that you can get from that.
there's always that.
It's always that.
If you like that sort of
fall
thing,
back
you know.
on that if you wanted to,
If you're into that, I mean,
in the future, if you so were inclined, you can absolutely,
sure.
go back in that direction. So let's talk about your writing. So Val, I don't know if you noticed the epic castle that is built in the background.
Right. Is that physical? That's not a.
It is. It's
What?
it is foam board actually, painted in my carport with my best friend Paul, who is my roommate, and he
That's awesome.
this is his studio because he runs a D&D podcast or D&D YouTube channel, and he films it in here, which is why I'm in here, because the lighting is really good. He
What
has
room
a
is-
full teleprompter and everything. It's called Role Play Studios.
I think are they on TikTok? Have they been posting stuff on TikTok?
I don't know. They used to be called House of Crit. They just changed their name, so I'm not
Okay.
sure if they're what they've done under Role Play Studios, but yeah, they film in here, and they film games in here, and they they do a lot of fun stuff, and he's letting me borrow the room for a minute.
That is awesome.
I really wish I'd written a fantasy because that or 50 Shades of Grey or something. That's what my friends, we were testing this out to see how it looked, and there were these chains that were here, and they're like, you need to take the chains down. Look at a little red room in here for this sort of podcast. And I was like, oh,
Not that kind of dungeon.
right.
I was like, so what are you writing? Are we writing the actual correct version of 50 Shades of Grey?
Right.
I think that would be funny. I just think that background's amazing, Val, and it gave me the idea we should just build one that we can roll in behind us when we're doing the podcast.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, I'm gonna have to show this podcast to my husband and be like, build me this thing.
This is all foam board
thing
painted.
for D&D
Like,
camp.
I don't know if you can hear that.
Yeah.
It's foam board, individual things that we painted and glued together,
Yep.
which took a long time.
Oh, no.
Well, the final result was well worth
It looks real though. He was right. I was like, why can't we just buy a vinyl thing of our stat? And he was like, that's not happening. We have to do it right. And I was like, it looks really good.
to paint and
So-
scrub things with aluminum foil balls. I know.
He does that. He makes models and sets for D&D
I
games, and
know.
he uses the foil a lot for that. And
I know.
You know what I think is funny about you saying that is any cosplayers listening to this podcast right now are like, of course you use it so it looks right.
right. And this is it would be unheard of to just put like a vinyl thing behind it. Like everything has to be, but all his stuff is really fantastic, and he's a very talented individual, and he knows.
So let him know that you have officially won, out of over 300 episodes, the best background award.
He'll be thrilled to know that. Role Play Studio.
Yes, that's background. If we actually gave awards, we give swag out, which you'll receive for being on the podcast. But if we gave awards, we'd give an award for that. I agree. Okay, question for you. You wrote a young adult book. Do you read a lot of young adult?
I do. I used to. I haven't read a lot recently, but yes, I grew up on R.L. Stein, Fear Streets, all that stuff, and then getting into, and of course Twilight, and all those books. I was very into that.
That was one of my most recent favorite cover discussions I had. Actually, you're coming back. I'm going to say this. I don't know if I've said this on the podcast, but I held a whole entire cover discussion with one of our authors who was, anyway. And on it, I said, I'm sorry, is there anything about an apple in Twilight? And they were like, what? And I was like, I'm just curious because, they've got an apple on the cover in hands. There is one scene,
right?
1 second with a stupid apple, and the apple's the cover of the book.
Is it even in the book? I thought it was just in the movie. I don't know. Is it in the book actually?
I don't know. We're gonna have to Google this.
Now we're gonna find out.
I'm gonna Google this right now. This could be the most important thing I ever discuss on this podcast.
I don't know that it was actually in the book, and I think they put the scene where he catches the apple for her, and it looks like the cover in the movie to like play around with people complaining that there was no actual apple in the book.
No,
I don't know. I
granted,
could be wrong though, and there might be one. It's been a long time since I read it.
I don't think there was any apple scene in the
Know
book.
that there was.
No, there isn't, but here's what it says. Stephanie Meyer said the apple on the cover represents the forbidden fruit from the book of Genesis and Bella and Edward's forbidden love. Like, but let me just throw this out there. There's no apple in the fucking book, and it has nothing to do with the vampire love story. Like, the point is that the cover of the book does not have to be 10 scenes from inside the book to sell the book.
Right.
That is my entire point. When people are like, well, my cover, blah, blah. No, schnookums, there's an apple on the cover of Twilight, which is probably the best-selling young adult book of all time.
It's an amazing cover, and especially at the time. There's been a million copies after it, but
Yeah.
it sold me. I kind of like claim every once in a while that because when it first came out, I remember I was at Target and I saw the book on the shelf and I go, that looks really good. And I just bought it sight unseen just based on the cover. I don't even know that I read the back. And I read it and I said, and I loved it. And I said, this is amazing. And I told everybody, all my friends, I was like, you got to read this book. And they're like, that was kind of like at the beginning where YA was becoming, adults weren't really reading YA. And they said, that this is like a kid's book, right? Like you're reading a kid's book. And I was like, I am. And I was like, oh gosh, I am. Like, that's crazy. And all of a sudden, like a month later, everybody was reading that book. And I was like, I read it first. I was like, you guys are late to the party on that one. But
I think the Six of Crows series is another, and the Shadow and Bone is another YA that has done very well. In fact, I enjoyed the Netflix series with that one.
I haven't seen it, but I want to.
Yeah, it's really good. But the book was a lot of fun. But yeah, YA, I think, is they're going to sort of touch on adult themes a little bit, but they're not going to give you a hard dive. And it's kind of nice because you still get a lot of those plot devices and characters without the adult heaviness.
And I appreciate you just went on a YA tangent when I was talking about the damn apple on the cover.
I'm sorry.
I appreciate
I did too.
That's okay. I watched you, Robin. You answered this and you took her, and I could tell from the zombie cider she's drinking. I was like, watch Valerie go. Robin just looked over in a direction and Valerie was like, I'm gonna go down that hallway. And I'm like, oh my God.
Go down that hallway. That hallway looked interesting. That's exactly what happened.
She is literally a squirrel. Like, that's good. So now you've made me forget what I was talking about.
We're talking about covers.
Covers. No, I was talking about you reading a young adult. So what is it like when you write? Do you write everywhere? Do you just take it with you? Do you scribble it in a book? Do you put it on a laptop? Do you voice record?
Right now I
BlackBerry like E.L. James.
No. It's changed over time. Like Hating Jesse Harmon, I wrote almost entirely on my front porch. It was really weird. Like I have a laptop and I was sitting on my front porch just writing all that. But right now I use Dabble. I don't know if anybody knows what that. It's like an online writing tool where it saves it automatically and it's all on a cloud and it kind of formats it for you. And it's just easier for me trying to drag a thumb drive around and my laptop, and because I have computers in other rooms and stuff like that I use, so I can just access it anywhere I am, which is great.
That's cool. Dabble is the name of it.
I like it.
Dabble. Okay. I'm going to ask a question, and then Val, you have to ask the last most important question.
Oh no!
Maybe.
Why do you
last time she kind of screwed it up, so I had to ask another question because it was a terrible question that she asked. But what about you and like your writing environment? Do you listen to music? Like, what is that like for you?
I will listen to music. Sometimes in order to, I don't know if it's described, to get in the mood to write, I will put my headphones on and I will not write, and I will walk around the house and think about what I want to write, like the scene I want to write, and I will kind of play it out in my head, and then I'll just sit down and write it. Sometimes I'll write just off the cuff and I'll listen to like very kind of low, like meditation music in the background. It's got to be something that with no lyrics though. Otherwise I'll just start writing the lyrics. Like,
You're like writing the next greatest pop song because
right. Except it's not mine and not what I was supposed to write at all. I'm like,
what about characters and dialogue? Do your characters sometimes go away with you? Like do they end up, we don't ask this a lot, but I know a lot of people are very character driven people versus the characters are part of the plot that they're writing. We have different writers, but some people say like their characters end up like going left and they're like, where the hell are we going? Oh, we're going this way. Do you run into that?
I mean, it's happened. I've changed direction in a scene like while I'm writing it. It's happened, but mostly I do think about the scene ahead of time and know where I want it to be and kind of how I want it to go. And so I kind of follow that. And it's not usually a surprise.
The director, not a follower.
Valerie's a follower.
I'm a follower. I'm like, oh, where are we going, guys? What? That's what happened there? Like we've been at write-ins together and then like it'll be dead silent and then suddenly I go, no.
No way. You're totally doing this, aren't you?
She does, and it's really funny because she doesn't know this, but she'll mumble, and it will be like a disagreement with what a character's doing or something, and I'm like, okay, that's what she's doing.
That explains so much about Valerie. This explains.
No, but I think it's very creative. I think everybody has different creative ways they go about how they do it. Like I get ideas driving around all the time. I have so many voice memos in my phone of like ideas or lines or how to connect like dialogue or stuff. And I'll record myself having conversations that I thought of in the shower because I don't know about you guys, but the shower is one of the best places to come up with entire plot lines.
Oh yeah, for sure. Showers, the car, anywhere where I'm supposed to be listening to somebody else.
Oh my goodness. Okay, Val, did you come up with an epic question? I gave you so much time.
All right.
She did not come up with an epic question.
What are your favorite, like, everyone likes to write to certain tropes. Like I am a sucker for a hint of grumpy sunshine with like, it's got to be a runaway of some sort, whether in runaway from nobility or the past or something of the sorts. I like those tropes. Is there certain tropes that you enjoy writing as a writer?
Tropes. I enjoy writing. Usually all my main characters are women, usually underdogs, socially in some way, and usually somewhat surprising in that they exceed, they're usually underestimated and exceed expectations in some way that is unexpected. Those are, I get, that sounds a little vague, I suppose, not a trope, but it's kind of where it goes.
Totally a thing, and sort of the overachiever kind of aspect.
I will say this though, there's a trope that I love reading. I've never written this trope. I didn't even know it was a trope until it happened to me, like in person, like real life. But
it happened to you in real life?
Okay,
yeah.
no,
Okay, so this is a trope. Middle-aged women who get divorced and buy an old house and have to fix it up. That is a real trope.
It is.
What's the one where she goes to like Tuscany, or Under the Tuscan Sun is one of she has to buy that old villa and fix it up. There's a book called The Ladies' Room. I mean, it's like there's just all that, there's way more of that story out there than I realized until I suddenly started seeking it out, because that's kind of what I did. I got divorced and bought an old house and had to fix it up.
And build a castle in it. I like
I built a well, I did.
The castle. The old house was a castle.
Oh my God, I love everything about that. You know, I feel like we learned stuff. I think Val would agree. I mean, we have so much fun on this podcast and just being on it, but we learned so many things. Like that wouldn't have been on my list of tropes at all. And now this is going to be stuck in my brain. I can already tell. And I'm
Yeah.
Hallmark season's coming up, and there's going to be lots of new ones.
Oh yeah.
I love that. Okay, Robin, shameless self-promotion time. Tell people where to find you.
Yep.
Well, you can go to my website, robinmimna.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. You get my book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Immortal Works website. I saw myself on
what is the name of
eBay.
the book again? Can we hold it up? Shameless self-promotion time.
Hating Jesse Harmon.
That is such a cute cover.
It is really, it's so cute. So cute. You know what I really loved, and I'll tell you, I'll show you guys. My publisher, they asked me when I was making it if I wanted anything special inside it. And I said, caterpillars and butterflies are a big theme in the book. And I said, it would be so cute if a caterpillar was eating the chapter titles and getting fatter and fatter throughout the book. And then eventually, cocooning and turning into, and they were like, yeah, okay. And so a year goes by and I think there's no way they're doing that. And they certainly did do that. They have, I don't know if you can see it, but my little caterpillar is eating the chapter titles throughout the book and getting fatter and cocooning and doing all the things I asked them to do, which was, I think, super sweet.
Oh my gosh, that is adorable. You gotta love brilliant typeset. You have to love brilliant typeset. Okay, guys. Robin, you have been amazing. Thank you for coming on this podcast.
Thank you for having me. This has been great.
This was really fun. This has been Drinking with Authors. I've been your host, Erica Lance. Our sponsor today has been Skunk Brothers Spirits, coupon code DWA10. Check them out. My amazing co-host that swooped in to save the day and just superheroed it was Valerie.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment and share with your friends about the podcast, and let us know if there's an author that you would like for us to reach out to and interview.
How would they do that, Val?
Oh, by emailing us at drinkingwithauthors@gmail.com. Is that it? Did I get that right?
That's perfect. Perfect.
Val. You're brilliant. Drunk. I'm out of drink.
I'm surprised you remembered that part. You impress me always, my friend. You impress me always. Anyway,
when I'm drunk, so.
Okay. We will see you guys next time.
Yeah.